Pakistan faces economic challenges, including high inflation, a depreciating currency, and a persistent balance of payments deficit, necessitating reliance on International Monetary Fund bailouts. While foreign exchange reserves may reach $14 billion by June of 2025, the country requires $27 billion annually to meet financial obligations.
The case with regard to Pakistan should be self-evident to those people who generously open their pockets to bail out this country. And I think you would also have an idea of how many of those programs have actually reached successful conclusion. Probably not many. So I think this is a decision that board members have to take by looking deep within themselves and looking at the facts.
The suspension of bilateral trade and the Indus Water Treaty by India could further strain Pakistan's economy, particularly its agriculture and hydropower sectors.
And it is also a signal to Pakistan. You see, it's primarily an agricultural country. And it is dependent only on one river system, which is the Indus, and its tributaries. So for the farming community, for the farmers, for the people, where about 80% to 90% of the irrigation and agriculture in Pakistan is dependent on the Indus River system. So the impact that has on the farmers, psychological impact, is going to be huge.
Pakistan's financial dependence on China remains substantial, with $28.8 billion in Chinese debt, 22% of total external debt. These loans, predominantly issued at commercial rates, have placed pressure on Pakistan's fiscal position. China continues to roll over loans, including a $2 billion rollover in 2025, and supplies 81% of Pakistan's arms imports, reinforcing Pakistan's strategic alignment with Beijing. Excessive Chinese lending threatens Pakistan's fiscal independence, as much of its budget and reserves are consumed by debt repayment, raising concerns about debt-trap diplomacy. Saudi Arabia and the UAE also play critical roles in Pakistan's economic stability, providing billions of dollars in loans and deposits. In 2024, Saudi Arabia committed $2.8 billion in investment agreements, maintaining its position as Pakistan's top remittance source, with over 2.7 million Pakistani expatriates working in the kingdom. Alongside China and Saudi Arabia, the UAE has helped Pakistan avert bankruptcy. However, both Gulf countries are increasingly prioritizing economic ties with India, which could impact Pakistan's future access to financial aid. The Economic Brief, DD India.
And Prasenjit Basu continues to be with us. Now, you've already answered this question to some extent. You did talk about the IMF meeting. But do you think that they're going to make things harder, given the fact that Pakistan is already debt-trapped? I mean, it's debt-trapped by China. That's the big deal, isn't it?
Yes. So, in effect, the IMF is making $1 billion potentially available to Pakistan tomorrow.
Right. Yes.
Some of that is going towards servicing debt that Pakistan owes to China,
Right.
nearly a quarter of it, or at least more than a fifth. And some of it is going towards funding its war that
Right.
it is conducting against India. So, these are things, in terms of the fungibility of what Pakistan uses the money for, there is not much that
Yes.
that the IMF can do about the fact that some of the money is going towards servicing debt to China. But what it can do is put in place conditions regarding defense spending, any kind of increased defense spending or any kind of increase in war fighting that occurs is likely to potentially result in a suspension of the disbursements. The disbursements don't happen immediately after the meeting, but the IMF is quite likely to make the next disbursement conditional
Right.
upon restraint on the armed forces front.
Now, can the other donors to Pakistan also act in the same way as the IMF, asking them, to stop their terrorist activities? Because after all, the money that they are providing is actually for an economic revival of Pakistan, but in the end, it could be just be used to divert it to fund terrorism, and countries wouldn't like that, isn't it?
Well, I think the 22nd April incident, terrorist incident, atrocity in Pahalgam, was timed for two things. One, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Saudi Arabia on that day. Second, the previous day, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, was in India.
Right.
So it was very well timed to basically attack both fronts. The fact that one of its most trusted friends was befriending India and has been befriending India increasingly over recent years was obviously something that that Pakistan, in particular the extremist element in the military, found distasteful and expressed through this move. So I can assure you that Saudi Arabia took note of this. It was a kind of insult to Saudi Arabia in a way. The fact that this had occurred when it was receiving an important guest, and so it actually is going to complicate matters for Pakistan going forward. Now, Pakistan, I think, has been used to the fact that India has merely threatened action and not taken too much action before 2014. I mean, especially the 2008 atrocity in Mumbai. But this is a different regime, and what is important is that India is not escalating. India is calibrating its responses. Initially, the response was aimed at terrorist training facilities. The second response was to Pakistan's retaliation, 15 military sites. So it is a calibrated response, and I think what is happening now is that Pakistan has been responding as if it did not face any economic constraints. But of course it does, and the economic factor is going to become increasingly important as we go forward. It's never been quite as stark as it is now, because if you look at Pakistan, in 1971, West Pakistan was about had double the per capita GDP of East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. Today, Bangladesh is ahead of Pakistan. So Pakistan is falling further and further behind economically. It's becoming more and more dependent on China, and any country that is economically dependent on China becomes debt trapped.
So you've written this book on Asia Reborn and how all the Asian economies are coming to their own. Pakistan is also part of that. Would you call Pakistan the sick man of Asia in a sense? And also the fact that, I mean, if for Pakistan to revive, it needs to tap international markets, and it has a pretty bad reputation currently.
Yes, I mean, for the last 30 years, Pakistan has increasingly become the sick man of Asia. In the early years, the first 30, 40 years after independence, it was an agriculture-driven economy, and its agriculture sector was far more successful than India's. And that gave it a certain stability. It has never really succeeded in developing a globally competitive industrial sector. It's had some niches in labor-intensive manufacturing, but never really a broad-based industrial sector. And nor has it really developed a services sector. So the economy is somewhat unidimensional, and in that sense has become a bit of a sick man relative to a dynamic region where everything east of it, starting with India, has prospered, especially over the last 30 years. So Pakistan is falling further and further behind, and of course pursuing terrorism as its main means of foreign policy, and perhaps its only export, is not really a path to get out of this debt trap.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Prasanjit Basu. Thank you for throwing light on the economic situation that Pakistan is in and the precarious situation it is in pursuing a conflict with India.